You know what we should do? We should have a different succulent every episode.
That would only benefit the people who watch this.
Yeah, but do you see? It does a couple
Thanks
things.
for joining.
If you're watching, right? Then there's little Easter eggs. Who doesn't love an Easter egg? Or if you're a Christian, a resurrection egg. Who doesn't love that? And two, it does the oh, I gotta see, right? You're on the edge of your seat. Maybe you weren't gonna tune in, but now you're like, okay, last week he had a cactus, and this week, a rhododendron. I don't know what another
you don't
succulent
even know what that
is. But what I'm saying is, I think it could be a good draw. Pray about. Will you promise to pray?
I promise to replace the plant every time we kill the previous one. How about that?
So once an episode.
The last one didn't last very long.
The only plant that lives around here is the one in this back corner. If you guys can see it on
plant.
YouTube. Hey, careful.
Oops.
Fake.
Sorry.
You know what's not fake? This new swag. Are you kidding me? Jimmy, are you holding a Clearly mug? What?
Okay.
Merchandising.
Anyway, welcome to Clearly. If you're joining for the first time, I'm Kelly. This is my crazy husband, Jimmy.
Careful. That's strike two.
And what was strike one?
Oh, the diss about the plant and it being fake and the fact that I can't.
That was not a personal diss. Anyway,
what are we doing today?
Today we're diving into 1st and 2nd Samuel. There you go.
Great. That's great. Yeah, you were expecting something from me, but you know what? I'm still wounded by those earlier comments, and so I'm not giving you anything tonight.
Jimmy, why should we read 1st and 2nd Samuel?
It's in the Bible.
Okay, but
it's the law.
What do you think most people think of when they hear 1st and 2nd Samuel? Are they like, oh, super boring, or oh, really interesting? Do you think most people even know what those books are about?
People are thinking about it, Kelly. They might be thinking about Samuel and his son, 2nd Samuel. I don't know. I don't know what.
That is true. It is an interesting title for a book, considering what happens in most of Samuel's not
really about Samuel.
It's not really about Samuel. So.
Oh man, spoiler,
but it does start with him.
So, it does.
One of the reasons we're covering books of the Bible
on
Clearly is because we need every book of the Bible. And what I found in talking to most Christians is we tend to spend a lot of time in like our favorite books. And for most people, those are New Testament books. And maybe we dabble in a few Old Testament stories, not entire books, but like little stories from it. And we actually have a imbalanced biblical diet. We need all of God's word. He gave all of it to us. But it's really easy to just land in places that feel really familiar because a lot of the Bible is really strange and foreign to us. But we're hoping that these episodes get you a little bit interested in why should I read 1st and 2nd Samuel?
That is a way stronger intro than me talking about succulents. And editor, if you just want to start with that would be great. Here's the other reason we're doing it though. Each book of the Bible is introducing us to a theme or an idea that we need to get our head around if we want to really enjoy God's word. And I think as we get into the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel and then going on into Kings and Chronicles, if you don't know, that's what's coming. We are getting into a genre. We're going all the way neck deep into the genre of narrative, which I'm excited for us to kind of pull the car over tonight and talk about the importance of narrative. But maybe we can just like, before we go like full on into that, just for our listeners, let's just give the top shelf 1st, 2nd Samuel, what's happening-ish stuff. Can you had a good way of talking about it earlier. Tell me about it. I'm a stranger. I sit down. You're at Panera Bread. I sit down. Bread. We've never met. And I just sit across from you, and I start eating your food off your plate, and I say, "Kelly, tell me about 1st and 2nd Samuel." What do you say?
The shortest thing I would say is in 1st Samuel, you're learning about Israel's first king Saul. What?
You wouldn't even address the fact that I'm a stranger sitting at the table. You
wouldn't. Oh my gosh! Just let me. You can't even let me.
But I'm saying, enter into the story with me. Like I'm there. And you just start talking about the Bible. That is so Kelly, guys. She wouldn't even bother the fact that he's eating her Asiago cheese bagel.
I love that you know that that's what I'd be ordering.
She would just start talking about 1st Samuel. Is that not weird to anybody else? Keep going.
Okay, moving on. I would say in the shortest way, stop it. First Samuel is really about Israel's first king, King Saul, and Second Samuel is about Israel's second king, King David. That's really the two characters who dominate each of those two books. And the reason it's called First and Second Samuel is it really begins with this transitional character named Samuel, who really is like a man bridging the gap between the era of the judges in Israel and the era of the kings. That Samuel truly is the last judge of Israel. And so if you remember Israel's history, they're freed from slavery in the book of Exodus through Deuteronomy. They're under Moses' leadership, and they're really connecting with God through Moses. Then you have this book of Joshua, where Joshua really is, the way they're connecting with God as they enter into and the priesthood that's been established by Moses, and they enter into the promised land. And then you have this era of Judges, where throughout the book of Judges, a different judge is raised up throughout that time period. And First Samuel is really this moment where something's changing in how Israel, how things are going in Israel.
Yeah,
as far as
how
their
Israel's
leadership,
organized in a lot of
how
ways.
they're organized, yeah. And I did look it up because I wanted to make sure. But the way we know, if you're curious, that Samuel is truly the last judge, is it uses the same language, and this is in 1 Samuel chapter 7, that you see all throughout the book of Judges. It says, they gathered to Mizpah and drew water and poured it out before the Lord and fasted on that day and said there, we've sinned against the Lord. And then it says, and Samuel judged the sons of Israel at Mizpah. And then later at the end of that 1 Samuel chapter 7, it says, now Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life. So he's see kind of him functioning as this last judge, and he also is the one who instates the first king.
Yep.
So he is kind of this bridge character between these two eras, which is where we get the title for these books.
That's right.
So
if you want to think about it like this, 1st and 2nd Samuel is the nation moving from a theocracy to a monarchy. That's really what's happening.
Define theocracy.
God is the organizing ruler of that society. He's the potentate who's sort of calling the shots directionally, who what we're going to do, what the game plan is, and versus a monarchy where you're being ruled by a king. So ruled by God, ruled by king. Now, of course, hopefully Israel would always say we're ruled by God, but you remember they got really antsy in the Torah, and they were like, no, seriously though, we really want a king. And he's like, I promise this is not going to go well for you guys.
In some ways, these books are Israel getting exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, that's
and finding out really didn't solve their problems the way that they thought it would.
No bueno.
Which is what I feel like I say to my children all the time when they're like, I really want this, Mom. Everything will be better if I just have this thing. It's
yep.
Like,
That's 1st and 2nd Samuel. And really the rest of the Old Testament.
Probably not. But what's amazing about these books, especially if you happen to be reading through the Old Testament starting in Genesis, is you do get some narrative sprinkled all throughout the first books of the Bible. But really, there's also a lot of legal things happening. There's a lot of instructional things happening, how to build the tabernacle. You're getting a lot of those things which can bog us down in our Bible reading plan, which you've probably experienced. But once you get into 1 Samuel, really for a long time in your reading, it is just story. It's narrative. And that's what we mean by narrative, that the genre, the type of literature in the Bible is narrative. And one thing to say about that is I love the fact that when God revealed himself to us in the word, right? He gave us his word to show us who he is. It could have all been just didactic statements. I am the Lord. Here is who I am. Statements about who he is and how he works and how we should live. And that's
Laws
it.
And rules and
Right. He could have done that. But instead, what you find in the Bible is a large variety of genres of literature. You find poetry, you find story, you do find teaching, very clear didactic teaching. And that makes for, I think just God knew we need that type of variety.
Very dynamic.
We need that type of, those different ways to learn about him and engage with him. And they hit us differently. They stick with us differently. And I love that God did that.
I really like reading narrative. Nobody doesn't like a story, so it's cool. It's almost like God designed us for story. That's crazy.
Well, even before you say, I would disagree I don't think everybody loves a story when it comes to the Bible. I think.
Oh, I didn't say that.
Oh, well, everybody does love a story.
Yes. I'm saying think about all of the, Grimm's fairy tales and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those things are doing the same, lifting that a book like the Bible is doing in its storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
It is trying to convey a point, a message, maybe
Right.
a moral, maybe, there's other things that's happening in the scriptures, of course, but
Right.
I'm just saying, like, kids aren't on the edge of their seat for 16 rules to a better you.
Right.
But they are, on the edge of their seat for Hansel and Gretel.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think we're wired to start caring about a character and to want to know what happens, and then to be pulling for the protagonist, and then to like have an enemy that we don't want to win, or we don't want to succeed, and then so I think we're just hardwired with that in us. But you're right. I think when people come to the Bible, they're not like often they're not feeling a lot of that. Why do you think that is?
I think story presents a challenge for us as people who want to take every part of the Bible and immediately turn it into a to-do list. Because it's like, well, who am I supposed to be like when everybody's flawed in these stories? It's not as clean cut as, say, 2 Timothy, which is going to give you a lot of really clear statements about who God is and how you should live, or Philippians or Colossians, which is why we tend to gravitate there, because it feels a little more like, okay, I know what to do with this. But you read, for example, in 1 Samuel, where King Saul goes to a medium and calls up Samuel from the dead, and Samuel shows up and actually speaks to Saul, which is in the Bible.
Ghosts.
Go read it. And you read it and you're like, what am I supposed to do with that? What's the takeaway?
The takeaway is ghosts are real.
According
I am legitimately, I think this Halloween, we're probably going to do an episode on this, because I have done way too much thinking and reading in the Bible about ghosts. And it's time we crack the case, guys. It's time we settle once and for all. Are ghosts real?
Well,
that's coming.
My point is, stories like that create a challenge for a Bible reader to go, what does that mean for me? Which, so much of us come just with that. So versus a story we read elsewhere, but we know when it's coming in the revelation of God's word, there's a implication there that it does mean something for what we're learning about God, about ourselves, and how to live. And story is really engaging to read, but I think people really struggle to read it when it's in the scriptures because of that reason. How do you then take a story and learn from it?
Okay.
How do you take a story and apply it to your life? Is it just find the character who seems to sin the least or seem to be the most successful?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be like that person? Is that the takeaway?
Yeah.
What do you do? You know what I mean? I think that's the question and the challenge with story.
That's a great tension. So I hear you saying, yes, the Bible is clear that the Bible itself, when it talks about itself, it goes, what God has revealed, it's God-breathed, it's profitable, it should train you in righteousness, it is the content you need for salvation. We look at the Lord in the scriptures, we're changed, but now how do we get all that goodness from a story? So maybe the rest of our time, let's just talk about that and maybe think through how a Christian should engage with story and narrative in the Bible in a way that helps us come out on the other side thriving in the same way we would if we were reading Romans.
Right.
Or Galatians, where we have all these like rich like propositional truths. And it's like, I believe that, how do you do that in story?
Yep.
We don't know. So listener, why don't you write in?
Oh my gosh.
And we would love to hear from you. I'm just kidding. Kelly, it's Pam! It's Partner Appreciation Month.
It's Partner Appreciation Month.
Also known as Pam. And if your name is Pam and you're one of our podcast partners, that's a double Pam.
Oh my gosh.
Pam.
We could not do Clearly without our partners. And so the month of April, we are celebrating our partners.
That's all I got.
With so many things. We're doing a hangout just with our partners later this month. We have a special text thread just for our partners. We're doing giveaways.
We got a giveaway. It's so big, we can't even tell you what it is because we don't know yet. It's going to be amazing. Access to all of our live recordings, which we love having you guys on with us. We're giving away our Clearly One pages that we're consistently making to help you get in God's Word. That's all free to you. But most importantly, we love that we get to be a part of this movement with you to help folks see Jesus clearly in His Word. You see what I did there?
I brought the Word in.
So thank you, partners.
Thank you.
Pam, we couldn't do it without you.
You couldn't do it without the month? Partner Appreciation Month?
Don't overthink it.
Well, can we just, as we get into the principles, when we talk about a story, it's good to just be reminded of like what you learned in like English, or literature class or whatever classes you took back in like grade school or high school or college. A narrative, a story has some basic elements to it.
Facts.
There's a setting, that you're paying attention to. There's a prologue sometimes, but the main things are you have a main character or main characters. You have usually a protagonist and antagonist. There's rising action, there's a climax, there's tension, there's resolution. These are all literature words, right? It's good to just be reminded when we talk about narrative and when we talk about the Bible being that, it's going to have all of those elements.
And what's exciting for me is all of those words when you're reading Frankenstein or something like, all of those things may or may not have meaning, may or may not be something to come away with a truth or whatever, but we know in God's Word, every word counts.
That's right.
Every inflection point matters. Every rising action and climax and decline, all of that is doing something because God has put in this, every word that's in this book is on purpose.
Right.
So that kind of electrifies for me all the elements of story that we're normally like, oh yeah, this is just how a narrative works. Now we're like, oh, and there's something here from the Lord for me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which means even those moments where you're like, that's not how I expected that story to go. It's like, well, that's on purpose from the Lord.
Yes.
Why did it not go how you thought? What is God revealing in that moment?
So let's talk about some of those.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're reading narrative, when you're reading story, and this would be true for fictional stories as well in the Bible and
fictional
non-fiction stories. By the way, you can have a fictional story in the Bible that's still true, like the realities are true. Like a parable.
You mean a parable?
A parable is an example of
Jesus telling a parable. He's telling a story that's
not
didn't actually
necessarily
happen.
something that happened.
Right.
But my point is just the principle is the same because events are happening over time and there's characters and all of that. So when you're reading narrative, the first thing you should be looking for are patterns. Again, there's a lot more to say in this, but not less to say. You should be looking for patterns in the story that, because pattern means intentionality. Pattern means the author is doing something again so that you would be reminded of a particular truth or an idea. And we're trying to sort out as we're reading, okay, what's the punchline? What's the main takeaway? And pattern is kind of like a breadcrumb. We're going to follow that, speaking of Hansel and Gretel, except it won't lead us to the house of an old lady who will eat us. It will lead us to life. And you see, that's how you do an analogy, people. Okay.
Wow.
So pattern in the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel. What can we say about it? Here's one thing we can say. The book opens, 1 Samuel opens with a poem. Not right out the gate, but by the time you get to chapter 2, we're getting a poem from Our Lady Hannah.
Samuel's mom.
Samuel's mama. And
just so fun that this whole story of kings and transition in a new era comes from a barren woman praying and then singing. It's wonderful.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Sounds like Exodus.
Sounds like
Luke. There's a big picture pattern happening in all of the scriptures. So anyway.
Yeah, that is important to note. A pattern can happen within a book, but because God's the author of all 66 books, a pattern can happen throughout all 66 books. And this is what we call biblical theology. But that's for another day, kids. Pattern inside 1st and 2nd Samuel. In Hannah's song, her prayer that she prays to the Lord, it's actually a remarkable prayer that she prays. But one thing you see come out constantly in the prayer is this pattern of, my friend Justin, we had him on before, calls it the great reversal principle, or the great reversal pattern that happens in the passage. So this is the whole the last shall be first, first shall be last, the proud person shall be humble, the humble person shall be exalted. So listen to verse 5 and following. This is her prayer. Those who were full hire themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry cease to hunger. Even the barren gives birth to 7, but she who has many children languishes. The Lord kills and makes alive. He brings down to Sheol and he raises up. The Lord makes poor and rich. He brings low. He also exalts. He raises the poor from the dust and he lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with nobles and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he set the world on them. So there's this moving the arrogant down and the humble up in her song, because Hannah feels this way. But if you're not reading critically, you can just go, oh, this is how one gal felt at one moment about one thing. But what we have to remember when we're reading the Bible is this isn't just story unfolding. This is theologically interpreted story. This is theologically infused story. So you got to bear that in mind, that there's more going on here than meets the eye. Right. So as you keep reading, you begin to discover what Hannah says with words in chapter 2. The players in this story of 1st and 2nd Samuel live out in their behaviors. So you get this moment of Eli early on. Kind of the evil Eli falling off the chair. He falls because he was heavy and he breaks his neck, right? There's this exalted person who falls. You get David and Goliath, and Goliath falls at the hand of this lowly person, David. Or you get Dagon, the Philistine god, falling before the Ark of the Covenant when the Ark is with the Philistines.
Such a great story.
So, but all of these things they're kind of pointing back to Hannah's song, and they're going, hey, this is a motif. This is a pattern in the book, and it's cluing you into something that the author, and ultimately God, the author, thinks is really important, which is that humble people get exalted by Yahweh, and exalted people, self-exalting people, they get brought down by Yahweh. So in this way, we learn what to take away from a narrative without it saying, hey, this is what you need to know. This is how you apply it.
Yeah. We've often, when we've done these books of the Bible episodes, tried to come up with a tagline for the books that we're studying, and you usually come up with them, but I came up with this one. I don't know if you came up with a better one after me, but
Let's hear it, girl.
But I would say of 1st and 2nd Samuel, it's the rise and fall of a king.
Look at you, pattern.
Both books follow that pattern that you really see in the beginning of 1 Samuel, the rising of a king in King Saul in 1 Samuel. And then we see his fall, right? And even in his fall in 1 Samuel is when we get introduced to David. We see David anointed in 1 Samuel. And as we move into 2 Samuel is when we really see him and really living out that kingship and his rise. And then we see David has his own type of spiraling down as his family kind of disintegrates into some chaotic moments. Yeah. And so both of these books kind of have this rise and fall. And yet, this is a fun, for all you Bible nerds out there, just go read these 2 books and keep a comparative chart of Saul and David. Because while there's a lot of similarities in their stories, there's a whole lot of differences. Yeah. And what's interesting to me is that while both of those men face a moment of grave disobedience against God, and because of that see a type of fall happen, the whole of the scriptures remembers both men very, very differently. The Bible will look back on David with with a
fondness.
lot of yes, with a lot of Jesus is often called the son of David.
Yeah.
And the Bible does not remember Saul the same way. And so that's always been interesting to me, because the type of disobedience David deals with always seems much graver to me than what we see Saul do. And so it's interesting to pay attention to that and compare the two, but you do really see both books of the Bible kind of follow this kind of upward trajectory and then this downturn. And again, because it's narrative, what's interesting as you read it is not to necessarily parse out every single word and figure out the Greek or the Hebrew meaning of these words. I feel like what helps you most in narrative is to zoom out and go, where did things change? What was the turning point for each man? Where, if I had to trace it to one moment where things began to move in a different direction, where was the fork in the road that things went bad? That's the moment that you pay attention to, which is getting into kind of one of our next things to look for.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not just patterns.
It's tension.
It's look for tension.
And you're exactly right. You are identifying every story. If it's a good story, it has hinge points, right? Like a door. At the point in which your story pivots to the left or the right, or maybe south or north.
Up or down, yeah.
And you're right. When you can identify those, you're identifying important features that is highlighting typically something moral or something that the Lord either loves or hates. And you're right, to be able to spot like the moment Saul spirals,
right.
You're identifying as something about what God values, and when that gets violated, what happens to a person.
Right.
And now I'm getting preached to by a story because I've identified the tension. The same thing in the story of David.
Right.
And there are big tensions that sit over above those sort of micro tensions. So you could zoom in and say, well, where are those? Where is the drama in David's life unfolding?
Right.
That's another way to talk about it. Where's the drama in the text? R.C. Sproul used to talk about that. Find the drama in the text. So where's the drama in David's life and Saul's life? And you're starting to get to some of the truths that we're meant to hold on to. Right. But then there's big boy tension that's being worked out in the story, which is, we talked about it at the beginning. How's it going to go for you, Israel, when you get a king? The very thing God said you shouldn't be after, because I'm your king, God says. And they said, no, we want to be like the other nations, give us a king. So you enter into 1st and 2nd Samuel with this big tension of how's it going to go when Israel gets what they want. So there's sort of a meta tension that you're experiencing with that hangs over these micro tensions.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm just thinking about it as you're talking, that it really, maybe it's because we're parenting teenagers. No, I'm just thinking about Israel really is, I mean, if you read it, it's comical, because they're essentially like, we want to fit in. We want to be like everybody else. All the other nations have kings. Why don't we have a king? We want a king. Our life will be so much better when we have a king.
Israel's a giant teenager.
Samuel's like, it's not going to be better. They're like, yes, it will be. Give us a king.
Yeah. I think I just had this conversation 30 minutes ago.
It is funny to just go, yeah, okay. And that's how narrative speaks to us, because you realize human nature, the human condition is not different. It is the same. And so you're able to watch something play out. And if we have wisdom, if we have a willingness to learn from the mistakes of others, these stories really do begin to speak to that in us and go, where is that in me?
Yep.
Where am I saying, I want to be like everybody else? God, why won't you just give me this thing and it will be okay? Yeah. And where are you looking at me saying, no, that won't fix your problem? Yeah. I could give it to you. And also things may spiral, Facts. So anyway, there's a whole lot of drama in these books. That is for sure. Yes.
Let me give maybe one more.
Yes.
And again, there's lots of things that you could say about, this is not an exhaustive list of how to navigate biblical narrative, but here's another thing that makes narrative powerful. If you come to it with these kinds of eyes, look for character. And look for characters, not character like the way a person acts, but characters, the people in the stories. Right. Because it's a fun way to read narrative. I remember in my very first study Bible, I forget who gave it to me, but about every, 10th page, there was a page that was just a character study of whoever, so you're reading David and it's David's little bio, but it's fascinating what comes out and what you can see in the full life of a person,
Right.
It's not, you don't study character just so you can learn like to act like them, because 9 times out of 10, these are pretty awful human beings. But we are watching God interact with a human being, and we are learning, the New Testament says, from their errors. We're learning from their decisions in ways that are really helpful. You've done a lot of character studies over the years. What would you say? How has it been good? Like, I feel like you have journals of just like, I'm going to identify every human in the Bible, and I'm going to write their character study because I'm a Christian. Yeah, what are you? Like how
Are you making fun of me?
I simultaneously celebrated and dissed you. A celadist.
Wow. Okay, new word there. No, I did. I had a mentor of ours challenged me at one point to become an expert in all the women in the Old Testament. And I was like,
oh yeah, you said this. Yeah, that's right.
Challenge accepted. I will do it.
You firstborn. Look at you. You can't get away from it. Right.
I actually had listened to a teaching I did about how 4 biblical women and how they wield their influence for both good and evil, and talking about the unique influence God's given women. And so he was giving me feedback on that, and his side comment was, you should go become an expert. So I did. I started a journal. I have a journal where every single female in the Old Testament, named or unnamed, because there's many unnamed women, so-and-so's mom, so-and-so's daughter, I have a little list. Sometimes it's just their name, but there's some, I have pages on some women, and I find it really interesting. So, but studying people, I think has so many benefits to it. But what comes to mind is what what Paul says about what Moses wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We've referenced this verse before, but he's actually looking back at the Old Testament and people and stories and saying, you, New Testament church, should go pay attention to that, because these things happen so that we wouldn't do what they did. So there is some like learning from people's mistakes that happen when you pay attention to people. You have the benefit of like reading about things that Saul's moment of disobedience has been really informative for me from 1 Samuel, because it seems kind of noble on the front end. And I remember really feeling challenged by that. It's like, whoa, where is my disobedience cloaked in some kind of nobility? Like, I was really just trying to do the right thing, And like, ooh, that's a good warning to me. So like paying attention to people and really kind of trying to hone in on what motivated them. What was the reward of that motivation? What challenges did they face? What temptations were in front of them? And how did they respond to those things? And how did God interact with them because of that? Those things are really helpful for me to then look at my own life and go, where do I see similarities? Where is there a warning for me? Mm-hmm. Where is there an encouragement for me? Where is there a temptation I'm fighting that this person's story can remind me to keep fighting and to keep maybe something else in mind? But so I think, anytime you're reading through a book of the Bible that has a key character or person in it, that's a really helpful thing to do, is just to kind of pay attention to them. I think too often we're reading all of our Bibles looking for ourselves. We're trying to pay attention to me as a character. Mm-hmm. Where do I show up in this? What does this have to say about me? And there's so much you miss when you read the Bible that way. If you read the Bible, though, going, these are the people God is writing about in 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, I'm going to pay attention to them. I'm going to, take notes on them as I read and see what I can learn from that. It's a much richer experience. And in talking about characters, I think the primary character we really want to pay attention to in these narratives is God.
Yes.
That he really is the key character in all of the scriptures, but in every book of the Bible, he is a character, whether he's mentioned or not. And sometimes when he's not mentioned for a long period of time.
Like Esther,
you do, you end up asking questions about why that is, or where you see, his hand, the shadow of what he's doing. But paying attention to that is the most beneficial character study you can do, because that's why the scriptures exist. They exist to reveal God to us. So, for example, this is not from 1 and 2 Samuel, but I will never forget reading the story Phineas in Numbers chapter 25.
Who can forget that story?
Who can forget Phineas?
Oh, that age-old story.
Who, runs into,
Finn. If we have a 6th kid, let's name him Phineas. Because you know what? Because nobody's doing it. And
I think people are doing it.
You think? Oh yeah, you know what? Billie Eilish's brother is Phineas.
There you go. See, but
I just can't win.
Okay, the story though of Phineas in Numbers 25 is kind of wild and kind of like he picks up a spear and goes and kills 2 people in this moment of a curse is happening. Anyway, you'll have to go read about it. And what happens? What does God do? Out of nowhere, it feels like God shows up in that scene and like heaps blessing on him and like kind of has this moment where he's like, yeah, Phineas is my guy and I'm going to bless him to the 3rd and 4th generation. And you're like, whoa, okay. I remember stopping going, all right, God, something about what he just did made you really happy and really excited. But I don't read it and go, that's awesome. So there's now an invitation for me to learn about who God is and what am I missing here. And sometimes those are the moments we read the Bible that kind of like we back away sometimes. I think too many Bible readers are like, that confuses me. I don't get it. I'm afraid of what I'm going to find if I lean in, what I'm going to find out about God. And so we just kind of move on really quickly and go, I don't know, that was weird. I'm going to move on. Mm-hmm. That is not the right way to read. I think your curiosity, your questions, your even kind of worries that maybe come up in that moment, if you'll lean into those, I've never not come away from leaning into that with more joy, excitement, and confidence in who God is.
Yeah.
Those moments are, Jen Wilkin, I think, famously said this in Women of the Word, but she said confusion, that moment of confusion or like curiosity where you're like, I don't understand, is what precedes learning. That's the sign that you're about to learn something when you feel a type of confusion. Like, right. I don't understand why this is. If you'll lean in, you're about to learn something. I think that's a great encouragement for narrative when you are reading it going, that was weird and I don't get it. Well, lean in. You're going to learn something, you know?
I had like a cool closing thing to say. I'm not even saying that was so much better. That was so good. That's fire. Will you go out with me?
Yes.
Yes. Nailed it.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Great. Narrative. Go read 1 and 2 Samuel. Go read some narrative and tell us about it when you do.
Boom.
There you go. Well, we hope you guys are really excited to read 1 and 2 Samuel. So
today,
go read the whole thing and then send us an email and tell us what you took away from it. Maybe share your comparative exercise, right, of Saul and David. Maybe you're going to go do that and then post it and tag us in it.
Calm down. No one's going to do that, Kelly.
Yes, there. You know why?
They're too busy.
They're going to go and get our 1 and 2 Samuel one-pager.
You're so going to do it.
Print it out at home. Okay, if you guys didn't know, for every book of the Bible that we're covering, we're creating one-pagers for you that you can print at home. You can get it, fold it in half, and it gives you just enough of kind of your handlebars for working through that book of the Bible. You can just keep it with you. There's charts to fill out, questions to answer, some things to look for and highlight and underline. It's going to give you some tools, some things as you make your way through that. So go to the show notes, go download your one-pager. Okay.
Hope this was helpful. Hope you understand narrative a little bit better. You want to share this with a friend, then go ahead and share it with a friend for crying out loud. Don't just sit on this. Pass it on, gang. And we're going to see you next time, come heck or high water. Because you can't say hell, that'd be inappropriate.
Wow, but you just did.
Oh my gosh.
Good job, Jimmy. Come on.
Bye.
Bye.